My name is Richard Furrow, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
So I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glowcloud team.
Welcome everyone. This is Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I'm here to help you answer your questions. How do you become a cloud architect? How do you become a cloud engineer? How do you become an AI architect? How do you become a security architect? Because I want you to have the absolute best career. You know, when I started my career, I didn't know better. And why would I know better? Because I wasn't a technology professional at the time. And I made a lot of mistakes, and I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money making mistakes before I got my first job. But when I finally learned what employers wanted and I finally learned what it took, I got an incredible job. And I not only started as a senior engineer, I was working as a principal architect within 2 years, and I transitioned from that first job to actually lead architect within 3 months. At this point, 25 years into my career, I've trained people that are working at Apple, at Amazon, at Cisco, at IBM, at Google, at Microsoft, at Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, Palo Alto Networks, Zscaler, and pretty much any other prestigious organization you can think of. I've trained people or coached people, and they work there, and I want you to have the same success. So please come ask your questions so we can help you. Before we get into answering your questions, I want to tell you about 3 awesome things for you. We are going to run a completely free AWS Solutions Architect Associate Plus Bootcamp, and I'll tell you why it's a plus. We're going to cover the entire Solution Architect Associate curriculum. We're also going to talk about the technologies that are in there, which they don't talk about on the Solutions Architect Associate curriculum. We're going to go into many of these new AI services from Amazon. We will get involved into many components from the AWS Advanced Networking, and we'll also put a lot of the AWS Security Advanced certification material into this as well. So it's going to be big. It's going to be a long boot camp. It's going to be 2 weeks. You know, we've added about 3 times the content to our last boot camps. Our last boot camps were really focused on just architects. Here we've got a good 50 labs. It's going to be lots of fun, and it's completely free. And of course, you know, you can't just learn by watching a video and not being able to ask questions. So we're going to do it live, and we'll teach for maybe 20 minutes, and we'll answer maybe 10 minutes of questions. So you get a chance to ask questions and make sure you're learning it the correct way. And our team loves doing this. We'll be doing it starting next week for 2 weeks straight. So come join the party, free AWS Solutions Architect certification training. So real excited about that. And this Thursday, we have a webinar on how to become an enterprise architect. I've had every one of these architecture roles over the last 25 years, and I love them all. The cloud architect is an incredible role. The network architect is an incredible role. The AI architect is an incredible role. And the enterprise architect is my personal favorite of all the roles. And I've had all of them. All those roles are wonderful, but I love doing the enterprise architect thing. I do them all and go back and forth, but that's my favorite. So it's going to be on Thursday, and it is completely free. Now, I'm going to tell you a little quick surprise. I woke up to about 150 emails asking us saying your sale's over and I missed it. So for just you folks that are on YouTube, we will extend our 50% off July 4th sale on every single program we have for the next 24 hours, but only the folks that are on YouTube that see this video are going to get it. We're not going to notify emails or things like that. So it's for you privileged few. So thanks for hanging around on our YouTube channel, and that's a gift from us. So lots of 3 things coming for you this week and a massive sale. So at this point, I'm going to be answering questions. Feel free to bring us your questions. We want to do anything we can to guide you so you can learn from other people's mistakes and get there faster, spend less, and earn more in the end. Because if you really know what employers want, you can be that perfect candidate, and that perfect candidate gets a much bigger job offer because they're more desirable. So ask us your questions. Tyrone, have we seen any questions come in yet? So please pop them on the screen. Two and Hughes. Hi, Mike. How do cloud architects get their positions? Do they start from cloud engineering, or do they start from tech support, for example? Well, Till and Hughes, it can be a lot of ways. So many people had started out maybe in tech support, then they became an engineer for many years, and then they trained to be an architect. And that's fine. But support, for example, has nothing to do with architecture. Cloud engineering, for the most part, doesn't have much to do with architecture either. And ultimately, that's one way. The alternative way is to get training and learn how to be an architect. And I've got to tell you, I've taken both cloud engineers and I've retrained them to get cloud architect jobs. A good example is Harshi. He worked with us for about a year and got a great cloud architect job. Naformi had a great cloud engineering background. We worked with him about a year later. He was working as a cloud architect. And, there are people like Arun, for example, came from us. He was working at Home Depot, but we got him his first cloud architect job at TELUS. Or Ivan Tamba, who was working as a waiter, who got his first cloud architect job after our training. Or Jordan Kittico, who again got hired by AWS, and of course he's been promoted since he's been there, as is Ivan Tamba, and his first job was an AWS solutions architect. Or Jeffrey West, who was a geologist doing some kind of very cool geospatial GSI kind of imaging, and he went from there to a solutions architect at Caliant right after our training. So it really doesn't matter. What matters is you learn to be an architect. So I think the key is we really have to differentiate between engineering and architecture. I'm going to tell you why it takes me just as long to train a cloud engineer to be a cloud architect as it does for me to say a nurse or a doctor. Now, I want to make this clear. Whatever job you've had in your past will help you. If you've been an engineer, you're going to be better on the tech things than if you weren't. If you've come from, say, healthcare or business, you'll probably be better at the presentation, the leadership, the sales, the communication, the emotional intelligence piece. That's why it doesn't matter. That's why a mental health tech like Jennifer Ema got through my program and hired by JP Morgan Chase in about 9 months. And that's why engineers that get through my program take the same 6 to 12 months, because it's a new job and it's a new career. So what does a cloud architect do? That's really the question. The cloud architect designs systems to optimize business performance. The cloud engineer builds the blueprints, builds the systems that are in the cloud architect's design. So we've got a system designer versus a system builder. Now, Two and Hughes, what goes into becoming a cloud architect? What do we actually do in our job? Well, we interview the client's executives to find out where they want their business to be. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and even 20 years from now. The next thing we do is we examine the organization's business processes. How do they get their job done? How does the sales process occur? What does the supply chain look like? If it's a product that's created, and is there technical support? How is the technical support provided? How does marketing run their division? How do the sales reps sell their thing? Because if we don't understand the business, we cannot design effective architecture. Now, people have tried to design an architecture without this, and 70% of all cloud architectures are disasters. And the reason is we can't engineer our way into an architecture. We need to know the vision of the business and then the business processes. The next thing that we need to do is we need to then learn how we configure, or we need to work with the client to figure out how we want the business to operate in the future. How do we want the sales process to occur? How do we want the marketing process to occur? And here's the reason why. If we know how the company wants to do their business, then we can design a technology architecture. Maybe the company's first contact is somebody goes to the website, they click on an AI chatbot, and that finds the right person for them to speak to. Well, that architecture will drive AI, CRM systems, expert systems, unified communication systems, but we won't know that until we actually know what the customer's goals are. So again, business vision, goals, business processes, new business processes. Then to and Hughes, we actually have to evaluate the organization's technology. And that means looking at their diagrams, reading their architecture documents, and bringing in some cloud engineers with us to baseline our clients' systems to see what's working, what's not, what the kind of utilization is. And then with the information that we've gotten from our engineering baseline and the results of the client, we now, to and Hughes, are going to build a team of architects and engineers to design the solution. Now, in any good architecture, you bring engineers with you because the engineers are the best experts of the technology. We architects are focused on driving their business performance, so we need to focus on that. And when you're focused on business all day, you can't focus as much on technology. So in any architecture, I build a team of 15 to 50 people. And if you ask David Lithicum, who's a good friend of mine, he was Deloitte's chief cloud strategist, meaning their chief cloud architect for the whole company. He will tell you that his teams are 15 to 50 people. And both of us will tell you it will take 6 to 12 months to truly learn the client's needs. And we will build this architecture team, and the team is going to work together. So if I'm going to do a cloud architecture, I'm going to need an AI architect. I am going to need some security architects. I'm going to need some network architects. I'm going to need some IAM architects. I'm going to need some big data architects. I'm going to need some data scientists. I'm going to need some DevOps engineers. And I'm also going to need software developers and others because we want to get their input into the technology design. Why? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You need experts from all these areas to design your system. So now after you lead this team, you'll respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, which are customer requests for information, pricing, quotes, that kind of thing. After that, we'll document the architecture. We will present the architecture back to the client. We will sell the architecture by the client to the client. We help create a governance structure. And then we cloud architects are off to a new client. So that's what we do. By comparison, cloud engineers build these systems. So a cloud engineer needs to really understand how to build these things, which means understanding the command line interface of multiple clouds. It means understanding how to automate things like Python scripting, Terraform scripting, Bash shell scripting. It also means things like understanding how to administer Linux systems and understanding how to administer Windows systems and installing applications in these things and patching them. It also means infrastructure as code, aka Terraform. It also means container management and optimization and orchestration, which means Kubernetes. So you can see the cloud architect needs to understand how the systems work, not how to build them, where the cloud engineer needs to know how to build them. Now, here's the biggest mistake I see when I deal with wonderful engineers that want to be architects. Architecture is understanding the elements of how the technology works under the hood, because you can't design what you don't understand. Building is how you actually build it. Now, to be fair to Hughes, nobody hires construction workers or builders to design a skyscraper, a shopping mall, or a bridge. They hire an architect, and they hire engineers and construction people to build it because one does not teach you the other. Here's an example to Hughes. I know many network administrators and network engineers that, literally speaking, configure routers and switches all day. But if you ask them, how do you design a network with 5,000 routers to make the routing scale, to make sure that the CPUs and DRAM in these routers can handle fluctuations in the network and deal with link flapping and other things that could bring a network down, they usually won't know because they know how to build and you need to know architecture. So for architecture, the tech skills are the underlying technology itself and how those technology pieces integrate, not engineering. So you can start by learning architecture. You can start by learning engineering. In most cases, if you're an engineer, you're going to need similar training to the architect. Now, I'll tell you right now, you get a really strong engineer and they become a great architect. They make awesome architects if they can focus on the business. If they go back and want to focus on the tech, they actually focus on becoming engineers than they do the architecture. And remember, 70% of technology projects fail. So it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters that you've got the right training. Anybody can be anything. Anybody wants to be an airplane pilot, they go to flight school. Anybody that wants to be a physician, they go to law school. Anybody who wants to be a physician, you go to medical school. And if anybody that wants to be an architect, you get good architect training and you will have a wonderful career. And everybody can do it. Doesn't matter your background. Good question, Hughes. What's the difference between cloud engineering and cloud architecture? Our solutions architects required to program. So two things. One is cloud engineering and cloud architecture. I just went over at Cloud Station, so I answered that. No. Are solutions architects required to program? No. Is programming going to be beneficial to you? Probably not. So Cloud Station, if we really look at what the cloud is, it's a data center that's virtualized. So, you could build your own, let's say you built a house. You own that house. You own the roof, you own the foundation, you own the plumbing, you own the electric, you own it all. It's a physical house. Now, say Cloud Station, if you were traveling, you might go to a hotel, right? And in that room, you would still have your plumbing, you'd have your electric, you'd have your bed or what have you in the hotel room. You are renting something inside of something else. When we realize what cloud computing is, it is a virtual data center. So what does that mean that you need to know? You need to understand how the data centers are built, how the data centers are designed, and the technology in the data center, and how businesses use that technology. So we're talking virtualization Cloud Station, things like how hypervisors work, and the types of virtual machines you would use, and when you would use it, and how you would scale the virtual machines and increase the performance of the virtual machines. We're talking containers and container orchestration, things like Kubernetes and where the containers are going to run, the compute for the containers. We're talking about networking. It's going to be the same networking in the cloud, the same BGP, the same IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, same wide area networks that connect us to the cloud that we would use in a normal business, whether it be things like private lines, IPsec VPN, software-defined WANs, SASE WANs. Same storage area networks, the block storage, object storage, file storage. And it's not how to configure it, it's how to design it. How does block storage do its thing? What are the weaknesses and constraints in block storage? How do I work around the slow performance of block storage compared to inside of the server storage? What do I do with block storage? Even the provisioned IOPS versions that AWS and Azure has, they're still slow. I mean, I can buy a 19 million IOPS RAID card for my server, and the fastest thing I can get from a cloud provider is 250,000 IOPS. So how do I work around them? What types of databases exist? Which type of database is the right use for what my client's actual needs are, not which database do I like, which ones are the best. So NoSQL databases, relational databases, in-memory databases, scaling out a NoSQL versus a database versus a relational database. And, those types of things. So then it's like data and data pipelines. How do we set up an architect a data pipeline to get data in and out to do what it needs to do for the business to make its business better decisions? How do we choose the right applications? When do we use a CRM system versus an ERP system versus a unified communication system? What's it going to do for the business? Then it's things like, how do I design my security environment? Where do I create my demilitarized zones? What do we allow in my demilitarized zones? How do we harden the servers that we have? What kind of endpoint protection do we need? What kind of end-to-end encryption strategy do we need? So that's all learning the data center stuff. We don't code in our jobs. We don't look at code in our jobs. So learning to code for an architect, it's about as useful as me teaching you Greek. Simera ogoksipnisa oktoayara, which means today I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, that didn't really help you design an architecture. And knowing how to write code in a coding language will not teach you about how you design a solution for a business. So some people, Cloud Station, come from a development background. Some people come from a healthcare background. Some people come from an architect background like me, or came from the healthcare background. It doesn't matter where you come, but coding is not really a relevant and important solution for us. Hope that makes sense. Tune use. Also, you saw the graphic for the free Enterprise Architect webinar. Can I go over the differences between an Enterprise Architect and a Cloud Architect? Absolutely. And if we really look at it, I want you to think from the top. The Enterprise Architect is the top of the architect food chain, if you want to come up with it. And I'll tell you why that is. The Enterprise Architect is the most business-focused architect of the bunch. And they are the most seen by upper management, Many times an enterprise architect will be the chief information officer or the chief technology officer. Many times the enterprise architect will be called the chief architect, and sometimes they just call us enterprise architects. The enterprise architect is a director level position at most companies, potentially a VP position. And this enterprise architect is really, really, really focused on the business. Now, because they're the most focused on the business, they're typically the highest paid, and they're going to be the least technical. Right underneath that, you're going to have your cloud architect. And in some organizations, the security architects, the cloud architects, the network architects, etc., they all would be the report into the enterprise architect who's going to be leading the big architectures in the organization. Now, Two and Hughes, the right underneath them would be your specialty architects, and the cloud architect would be a specialty architect. Now, Two and Hughes, many times organizations don't have an enterprise architect, they just have a CIO. And in those cases, the cloud architect could be the top of the food chain, meaning everything we're going to design now is either going to be in a data center or the cloud. Now, 98% of organizations use more than one cloud, and so many of them use private clouds, like a VMware cloud or a Nutanix cloud or an OpenStack cloud, and they marry them with 2 or more clouds. So the cloud architect could be the top architect there, because what they're really dealing with is all the networks, all the data centers, and all the clouds, which is all the compute, storage, what have you. And then they will have specialty architects working for them. So if I was, say, working at a consulting firm, a big 4 firm like an Accenture, or Deloitte, KPMG, or Capgemini, and I'm the cloud architect and I'm dealing with all these clouds, I'm going to need to bring in a security architect to help me with security, and network architect to help me with networking, an IAM architect to come up with the correct IAM strategies, big data architects to help with that. So no matter what, it's there. So the enterprise architect is 80 to 100% business and up to 20% tech. The cloud architect's about 2/3 business and 1/3 tech. And that's the secret why most people don't get hired. They train to be all tech and they lack the business skills, and they can't be hired because you can't optimize your client's business performance if you don't know business. And if all you know is tech, you can't be an architect, because what are you going to design? You don't understand the client's business, so you can't do it. So keep that in the back of your mind. And if you do get that role, the people that don't have the business acumen, the business knowledge, the business capabilities, they won't know how their business works, the client's business work, and they won't know how to enhance the business. So by doing so, they're going to design technical solutions. And 70% of all tech projects are failures. The tech works, but the business bought them and got no value from it. And I don't know about you. I don't like spending money and getting nothing for it. I don't mind spending money. But if I buy something, I want to get a return on it in some way, shape, or form. And businesses expect a return on investment for their technology dollars. And in most cases, they don't get it. It's pretty sad. Cloud Station, you've been an engineer for a long time and you keep failing architect interviews. What am I doing wrong? Well, Cloud Station, I've not interviewed you. So I can't tell you exactly you, but I'll tell you, after interviewing thousands of engineers that wanted to be architects, I can tell you where they usually fell. Remember, the primary job of the cloud architect is to design a solution to improve the business performance. And when I interview engineers, typically their focus is the tech, because that's what they know and love. And that's okay. We need people to build these designs. So when I ask someone a technology question, and I'm expecting, here's the technology, here's how this technology works, here's what the technology can do for the business. And the engineers talk about how they did the work. I don't care how they did the work, because that's not going to be their job anymore. I care about how they can do this job that I'm trying to hire them for. So there's that. The most of the time where I see the engineers failing the architect interviews is as follows. The engineers get through the technical components in the interviews real well, because they're the best prepared to do it. Let's be fair, let's be honest. And then it comes to the presentation interview. The last part of an architect interview is a sales presentation across a group of multiple stakeholders. You'll typically have 2 people mocking C-suite executives. You'll have a technology person in there. You'll have some other business people. And you need to be able to deliver a presentation that's going to move the client to want to buy your solution. That's typically where the engineers fail. And it's why? Not because the engineers aren't awesome. They're awesome. But the engineers are focused on the tech and they are not focused on the business. Here's another thing which causes engineers to typically fail on interviews. So here's the way engineers like to talk about things in general. Here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem, here's how I fixed it. And to an engineer whose mind is thinking, technical problem, technical problem, technical problem, here's the fix. Here's how architects, C-suite executives, and sales executives present. Here's the solution, and here's how I got to it. Because executives don't have time to think about problems. Quite frankly, if it's solved, they don't want to know about it. And the executives don't want to hear about the tech. And executives don't like tech. Executives like making money. Executives like growing the market share. Executives that like potentially increasing the raises they can afford to give their people, or increasing shareholder value, or delivering a dividend on the stock that the people purchase. They're focused on that. They're not focused on the tech. So when you present to this audience, and there's usually some executives, director level or VP people that interview you, you have to be relevant to them. You have to speak their language, speak the things that they care about. And you have to remember at the end of the day, our job as architects is a balance of business and tech. We are designing solutions to maximize business performance. We cannot be the biggest tech-focused people. In Cloud Station, sometimes I've seen architects actually ask engineers certain questions as a trick. And they try to see how deep they go. And if they start babbling in technology things, the person says, thank you, come back when you have more experience, which is a euphemism for you don't have the right skills for this job. But if that engineer walks in there and they understand the technology and how the technology works and how they understand business and how this technology solution will optimize that business performance, they're getting hired. Guess what? If it is a video editor like Lenny Burnett, who was our student, who can go to the client and talk about their business needs, their business goals, their business pain points. If they're able to go in there and learn about their business processes and create a solution that's going to optimize their business performance, guess what? Lenny Burnett also got hired as a solution architect without coming from tech. And he's awesome, incredible. Any company's lucky to have him, but that's the key. You've got to have the skills for the job. And engineering and architecture, two very important jobs. One's not better than the other. They're equally important, but it's a different job. And, you know, if somebody's been a nurse for 20 years and then they go to interview to be a physician, they are not going to get hired unless they go to medical school. It's the same thing. It's a different job. And you've got to frame yourself and show that you are exactly what they're looking for. Good question there, Cloud Station. And if you have questions, please bring them. I'd love to help you in your career. I am a data visualization developer. Is there a pathway for you to become an architect? Absolutely. Your background is irrelevant. Daniel Bosu was a high school dropout, but JP Morgan Chase hired him as a solution architect because he was so smart and so capable. They hired him. At the same time, I had someone that was more of a developer, Pritipal St. John, who after about a year of training, we got him a job as an enterprise architect, and he was also awesome. It doesn't matter your background. Jermaine Hefton was selling landscaping gear, but now he's an enterprise architect after our training. Or Wallace Agana from Ghana. He was a sales rep and poof, hired as a solutions architect. Enterprise architect at JP Morgan Chase. So we can all get there. What you have to realize is what you're doing now is development, and that's great. And what we're doing is system design. So how do you go from where you're at to where you want to go? You learn. And it's simple. What's so exciting to me about people is we can learn anything. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. All of you can learn to do anything you want as long as you get the right plan, the right training, and you follow it up until you're great. There's no job that you can't get. So the answer is yes. The pathway to become an architect is going to be as follows. First, I wrote a completely free document along with my team on how to get your first cloud architect job. There's a link to that in the description of this video, but Tyrone, please pop it in the chat box so others can get it. And that's going to tell you every skill that you need to understand. What will you need to do? You will need to get training. And yeah, you're going to need to get training in certain skills. And when you have those skills, you can get any job you want because it doesn't matter where you come from. It matters what you learn, and so you have the skills. So if we think about it, let's talk about what those skills you actually need are and why you need these skills. You have to understand that as an architect, we have to design a solution to improve our client's business performance. So what do you need to know to be able to do that? The first thing you need to have is business knowledge of business. How does a business operate, for example? How does a business make money? What are the responsibilities of the C-suite? What is the impact of micro and macroeconomic factors on their business? What is the impact of an organization's finance? How and where should they invest their capital? Should they have a capital expense versus an operational expense? What's that organization's cost of capital? Is it cheaper, and it usually will be cheaper to lease the technology to have a private cloud than it would be to go to the public cloud? But is the agility of the public cloud worth it based upon the velocity that an organization can change or adapt to market conditions or change to economic environment? So first, we need that business acumen. If we don't have it, we can't improve our client's business performance. So that is critical. We also have to have something called CXO relevancy. I remember early in my career, I was with a techie. And I brought the techie in because this was one of the best techies I'd ever seen in the world of MPLS traffic engineering. This was a genius 10 times over, multiple CCIEs, super, super smart. I brought him into the executive, and just in case they had a deeper question that I wanted to deal with, because my world was IP multicast and large-scale BGP systems. And he walked into the C-suite. There's a chief information officer in the room. Somehow the CEO came in the room because this was going to be a big deal. And this guy was babbling on label distribution protocol and RSVP signaling. CEO walked out of the room. CIO walked out of the room. And I tried to go take the executives to lunch to try to fix it. So you have to know what the CEO cares about, what's important to them. And you need that information to relate to them, to ask them about their business, to ask them about their goals, to ask them about their challenges, and to be able to talk to them as a peer-to-peer. Because if you're going to design an architecture and the architecture is going to change the way that organization operates, and you don't have the ability to communicate to that C-suite, the likelihood of them buying your architecture reduces, which means then your architecture is paper documents and it doesn't get built to life. It doesn't help anything or do anything. And a lot of what we get is paid based upon the amount we can help our organization sell. So no sales, no salary. So you need CXO relevancy. The next skills that you're going to need are good leadership skills. And here's the reason why. One person design an architecture. For people that need cloud architects, they're big businesses. And they need people that can work with the team, lead the team of the 15 to 50 people that it's going to take to design an architecture. Look, I've worked on many billion-dollar architectures. It's not done by one person. The next thing that you need to understand is how to manage stakeholders, because the client is going to have multiple stakeholders, multiple business teams, multiple business units, leaderships of all people, and processes and technologies and business. And the reason you need this is in any architecture, what you do is going to be helpful to one part of the business and create new challenges for another part. So you're going to have to mediate between the business divisions to help design your architecture. So that means constant speaking with stakeholders, negotiation, process revision in your architecture to make sure your architecture works. Then sales. If you can't sell, you're not going to get hired. But if you can't, because you won't be able to sell yourself into the job, but if you can't sell, no one will adopt your architecture. So I learned when I learned to practice internal medicine, you need to sell. Because if a doctor can't convince a patient to take their medication, or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, I'm a nurse practitioner, then the patient won't take their medication, they won't get better. If you can't persuade the organization to adopt your architecture, it dies. Now, nobody hands us a piece of paper that says, hey, Mike, build this. So we're going to have good communication skills to get the requirements, the information from the clients, and to communicate to teams. And you're going to need something called executive presence. I'll get to the tech skills in a minute. So here's a person without executive presence. Hi, everybody. My name's Mike. I'm a cloud architect, one of the first CCIEs. Even if what I said is fine, you're not going to pay attention to me. But if I can walk in the room and command the room and I've got executive presence, people will listen to you and you'll be taken seriously. And the last component from the business skills that you're going to need to be an architect are you're really going to need to be good at managing vendors. Look, it's going to be extremely rare that you're ever going to see an all AWS architecture, like real rare, or an all Azure architecture. You're going to be dealing with multiple clouds. You're going to be dealing with networking vendors, security vendors, because we're going to be using enterprise-grade security tools, which in many cases are going to be much bigger than some of the cloud providers' native tools. Things like adaptive next-generation firewalls that we can get from, say, a Palo Alto, a Fortinet, a Check Point, or a Cisco. So there are your business skills that you'll need. Now let's talk about the tech skills. What are we really designing? Well, we're designing a cloud architecture. So that means you're going to need to know how to design networking things like the wide area network. You need to know how to design the address planning. You need to understand how to set up or how to design the routing within things like BGP. You need to understand, the types of servers that you need, the types of DRAM storage, the backplane performance of these servers, the type of network performance you get on these servers. You're going to need to understand containers and container orchestration methods and functions as a service as well. You're going to need to have good knowledge of storage area networks like block storage, object storage, file storage. You're going to need to understand the things like RAID and how to work around the cloud storage providers' limitations. Things like, say, NetApp on FSx for Lustre can give you a block storage like solution, but it's going to give you much better performance. Or RAID. You're going to need some good security design skills. Like how do you design your demilitarized zones, your security policies, data loss prevention strategies. Your big data design skills, like how would you design data pipelines, data lakes. And then your multi-cloud architecture skills. So they're going to be the skills you need. But you have them. You will get any job you want anytime. So of course you can become an architect. Now, obviously we teach all those skills because we create architects, but whether you're with us or whether you go to an MBA for some of the business things or a business school for some of the business things, and then you go to a couple other companies to get other good training, all I care is that you get a great cloud architect job, and that's why I want you to understand it. So yes, you can become a cloud architect if that's what you want. If you wanted to be a big data architect, you would do the same thing towards big data. If you wanted to be a security architect, of course you can. You would learn how to do everything I talked about from a security perspective. More focused on security than everything else. And you can be a great architect. Please ask more questions. And if anybody's got questions, please ask them. I'm not scary. I don't bite. And before we get to the next question, wanted to let you know that we are running some free AWS Solution Architect Associate Training and more. Next week, it's for 2 weeks straight. We'll cover the entire AWS Solutions Architect certification from their perspective. Then we'll add a lot more information on the underlying technology. And then after that, we'll add components of the AWS Advanced Networking, the AWS Security Advanced, and many of the new AWS AI services. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be free. So join us. On Thursday, we have a completely free How to Become an Enterprise Architect, and it's an incredible role. I encourage you to join us. It's going to be completely free. And again, the link for that is in the description of this video as well as the chat box. And my team and I decided, because we received such an overwhelming number of emails this morning asking us if we could extend the July 4th special, the 50% off for another day. We did it. So we're extending it for one more day site-wide on every program. So please ask your questions. Serenibus. Hello, sir. I completed my AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification. What are the benefits may I get along with projects on this certification? So Serenibus, could you tell me what goal your career is? Because just doing projects will not get anyone a job. Doing the right things and developing the right skills will get you a job. For example, learning how to fly an airplane will not make you stand out as an attorney. And so many of the times, I see people doing the wrong projects. So lots of people want to be a solutions architect. And they go put out a WordPress website and they make a blog about it and a post about it. That just shows me not to hire them as an architect, because they're doing things that show me they're not an architect. So let's talk about the difference. If I'm dealing with someone that wants to do a project related to be, say, a solutions architect, and a solutions architect's designing systems to optimize business performance, I want to see content out them on, what can this technology do for a business? What problem does say the healthcare industry have, and what technologies can do what to optimize that industry? What could be done with generative AI to improve radiology care and reduce the cost of radiographs, MRIs, X-rays, CAT scans, that sort of thing, at a lower cost and have less medical mistakes. See, that's architecture stuff. So when an architect puts out a thought leadership document like that, and I see that as a hiring manager, I book an interview with them and I reach out to them because that's their job. Now, if somebody talks about coordinating a large RFP response, so Srinivas, when it comes to an architecture, a company will basically say, we're looking to do this, and ask 300 pages worth of questions. Sometimes they're that big, sometimes they're not. Usually they're not, but I've done 300 pages of question things. They're concerned about your responses and the solution you can put together at its cost. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So there would be an architecture thing. Giving a presentation, it would be an architect thing. An engineering thing might be using a Terraform script to install 50 servers that are running these applications in a load balance manner, could be. So that would be an engineering one. A cloud engineering project could be some Python script that automates something, for example. A cloud engineering project might be putting a high availability website on 2 clouds and 2 availability zones and designing the security around it for that, or building the security around it. So as you can see, the projects have to be relevant. That's the concern, the relevancy of the projects. So one of my students, Robert Welch, I can remember him. He got incredible cloud security architect after our training. He put out architect content every single day, like we told him. Every post, he'd get 4 or 5 interview requests because he showed the world he was an architect. By comparison, I've seen architects put out all this techie stuff, and then when people look at it, and they always look at your social media before they hire you, they say this is a techie. So the key is being an expert at the job you want. If you wanted to be a network engineer, I'd say get some Linux experience in today's world, learn some Python. I would say hands-on experience configuring OSPF, EIGRP, EBGP, IBGP, QoS, spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, so those kinds of things, because the projects have to be relevant for the job. So if you tell us what you want to do, I'd love to give you projects. But, Srinivas, you asked the question, which is why I have to retrain people every single day. And I have people that come to me with 6 certifications, and they have none of the skills that they actually need for the job, because all the skills they learned were for somebody else's job. So projects, very important. Learning how to do the job, very important. When we train architects, they're in class together, and they're designing architectures together. They're responding to RFPs. They're presenting their architectures to a C-suite audience. They're selling their architectures. They're leading architecture teams. They're doing that in their real architecture projects. When I would lead teams of engineers, I'd have them do a lot of hands-on projects and hands-on building and hands-on performance tuning and debugging and all that stuff. So projects need to build your things. Your certifications need to reflect you. For example, when I want to look for an architect, if they've got a developer and a SysOps and a DevOps certification on their resume, I don't think they're an architect. I think they're either the maintenance person with SysOps, the development and automation process type people, that culture from DevOps, but I don't see an architect. When I see someone with a medical degree, I see them as a doctor. When I see them with a law degree, I see them as an attorney. So there's that too. So as we plan our certifications, as we plan our projects, they need to be there. Now, by comparison, when someone comes to me with a TOGAF 10 and a AWS Solutions Architect Professional and a CISSP, and then they've also done the right projects, I say, wow, this person has an architecture background. They put their time, effort, and money into learning architecture. Let me interview them. And then when I interview them, do they have the skills for the job? And if so, I hire them. And if they don't have the skills for the job, unfortunately, I can't hire them. So I hope that helps. Please, if you got some questions, help. I really want to help you build your best career. I don't have a ton of time today. Usually I bring my entire team here, but we're working on some pretty exciting updates of things that I'm pretty proud of. So it's just me today. So, Kumar. Hi, Mike. Can I explain what is meant by business acumen? Does this involve having good knowledge of economics and finance? Shantu, yeah. So economics and finance are very critical components of business acumen. But business acumen includes some other things. So let's talk about health, like industry acumen. So if you're an architect, there's lots of ways you can specialize in your career. Here's what I mean. Early in my career, I focused on designing systems for the clouds. Like I designed the cloud providers' clouds, and I consulted to all the cloud providers on how you design your systems. How do you build your VPLS cloud or your BGP cloud or your this cloud or your that cloud? How do we increase the performance? How do we increase the availability? What type of change control kind of systems do you need? And all the underlying IP infrastructure. That's what I did early in my career. I designed networks for infrastructure. So I became an expert on huge routing, lots of BGP, lots of MPLS traffic engineer. How do you design the world's largest networks? And that was that. But I couldn't design those networks without learning the internet service provider's business, learning what percentages they tend to overscribe their links, and cloud providers oversubscribe as well. That means selling out like about 10 times more capacity than you have, working on the statistical analysis that most people won't use all their systems capabilities at the same time, and you'll still have enough capacity. So that could be there. So that's very important in that industry. Now, Kumar, later in my career, Cisco gave me the opportunity for a massive promotion. They said, we are creating a healthcare architecture team. We're hiring some healthcare CEO, a healthcare CFO, some physicians, a nurse practitioner like you, some medical insurance people from pharmaceutical people. Why? We were all experts in healthcare. And if you go to the best companies like an IBM or a Microsoft or a Cisco, they always have special strategy consulting divisions that have industry experts as part of their architecture practice. So in that case, the business acumen would be the healthcare, let's say, how healthcare businesses operate, how the pain points and the constraints in healthcare organizations, and knowledge of economics and finance and process engineering, and how to sell, how to communicate to the C-suite. So all of that's there. So it's a combination between business knowledge and industry knowledge. Now, there are plenty of good architects that basically work on one project, and then they go to the next project, and they go to the next project after that. And they have good business skills, but they learn additional skills as they go along, and they learn more things. So if I was going to consult to a global retailer, and once in my career, I did a $1.1 billion deal, architecture deal, with a global retailer that was a closed retailer. I spent 6 months learning about closed retailing so I could help with that architecture. So there's that. But I had an MBA. I had a lot of business skills. So knowledge of economics, accounting, finance, sales, process engineering, you name it, business. Because if we're architects and our job is to design a system to improve business performance and we don't know business, that's kind of being like the airplane pilot without knowing how to fly the plane. Hope that helps. Please feel free to ask more. Love answering questions. You're currently working with the solutions delivery team. You're not having the best of luck securing solutions architect interviews. I come from a sales background, and more recently you've moved to IT. So the question I ask is, what kind of a message are you putting out to the world, and what have you learned? So, and what does your resume look like? So what's on your resume? And if you can answer something, some of those questions, I'll help you answer that. But that's really the key. So I'm going to tell you a lot of times back to basics, and I'm not saying this is you. I'm going to give you the 4 or 5 biggest resume things that I see. Most solution architect resumes that I look at, about 80 to 90% of them, look false. And I'll tell you what I mean. I will see someone write something down in the resume, and by their word choice and the way they write their sentences, it looks like they've strung buzzwords together that they don't understand. I see this every single day. And there are things like, I provided enterprise grade security using AWS, WAF, Shield, NACLs, and for a $2 billion or $20 billion enterprise. Now, a $20 billion enterprise is not going to use AWS WAF as their primary firewalls. They're going to use 2 layers of firewalls, a Cisco, a Palo Alto, a Fortinet, a Checkpoint, what have you, as their primary level. They're going to have SIEM solutions that are inside of their system that are going to be there. There's going to be some data loss prevention systems that are there, and they're still going to use many of those AWS tools. But I see that, and we look at it, and we're like, yep, nope, that's not an architect. That's someone that got a certification in the writing thing. So there's that. Next kind of thing that I typically see. And when I look at what the person's done, I see I set up a website. I set up high performance storage by using EBS provisioned iOS. And again, that's 2 things. One is it's showing the doing and it's not showing the system design. The resumes that don't get interviewed typically lack presentations given at this type of audience. That would be something that would need to be there. They typically don't talk about communications and to the C-suite, so they're missing that kind of thing. They also typically are missing things like design what kind of architectures, like design 99.999% high availability architectures. That means something to me. And if there's something next to it which says through a process of extreme change control, redundancy, and resiliency, and 1 or 2 other bullet points, I know they know it. So what's in there? So that's a lot of it. What's in there is typically not relevant. And then how do you position yourself? So I'll give you an example. When I went on my first interview, and when I created my first technology resume for my first tech job 25 years ago, I realized what hiring managers were looking for because I had spoken to about 50 recruiters and asked them, I did a survey, what do employers want in the perfect network engineer? And I had a list of things. I knew one of the things that employers wanted was someone they could get a good information to create a solution. So when I went to my old job, which was practicing internal medicine, I was a nurse practitioner and I had my own internal medicine practice in those days. I talked about gathering information through a process of interviewing patients and other clients. And I put that on there. I talked about giving health and wellness presentations to key stakeholders and things like that. And the person went, oh, well, that looks like something an architect or a senior engineer would do. And they were all things that I did. So you've got to tease out those things. But you also have to have the right skills. Now, when we train people back to basics, we create an internship for the students and they become an associate cloud architect when they've done a percentage of our program. And they do architectural designs, architectural presentations, architecture, everything. They practice the interview. We teach people how to actually build the resume. We teach people how to win that interview. We teach people how to create the content to make the recruiters come to you so you don't have to apply for the jobs. And when recruiters come to you and they send you on the interview, not only do you not need to apply, but you don't get auto-rejected from HR. So there's a lot of that. But I'm curious as to what your resume looks like. I'm curious as to what kind of sales did you do? Did you do corporate sales? Because there's a lot of ways to position that. Or did you do retail sales, which we can still reposition it, but it's not going to be the same as if you'd sold. So, for example, Al Legistrar, I was trying to picture him. He was a student of mine. And his last job was working for Kimberly-Clark. It's a consumer products group company, and he was dealing with medical stuff that he was selling. We trained him, and it did take about 9 months, but a year later, he took a job as a senior solutions architect within Deloitte. Or Jermaine Houston, who was selling landscaping gear, and then after we trained him, and boy, this guy was smart, but after we trained him, he got a job as an enterprise architect, and Wallace Agana was a sales rep. But it took time to learn the skills. It took time to actually learn how to give those presentations, how to sell it, how to understand the underlying technology. So it's most likely that. But if I knew more, like your LinkedIn profile, I could tell you exactly. But these are typically the kind of things that I typically see. And then when it comes to actually the resume itself, it typically looks like tech with no transitions or ties back to the business. Back to basic. Mike, what's the difference between our tech interview mastery program and the cloud architect program? That's a great question. So Our tech interview mastery program is really how do you prepare and win interviews. And it gets into what employers are wanting, and it talks about how to demonstrate that you are what employers want. It teaches you how to take control of the interview and how to guide the interviewer to ask the questions that you want them to ask, and not the ones you don't. And it teaches you how to mitigate your weaknesses. It is a seriously executive interview program. And why did we create this program? It's a combination of 4 really small group private interviews with an interview coach from me, coming from it as an interview coach background and an executive. And I also have an HR person with an HR background in that's also an executive. So we've got that. And then we do monthly classes. That's focused on interviews. The Cloud Architect Career Development Program is how do we create an architect? Sure. So I see you've done some now as an education service desk engineer, solution support, tech project support. So you've done engineering, and that's wonderful. But how do you go from an engineer to an architect? How do you go from a nurse to a doctor? How do you go from a pilot to a lawyer? You learn. So the Cloud Architect Career Development Program is a big cloud architect program. Doesn't matter where you're at, doesn't matter if you're certified or not. We take you and we teach you how to be an architect. There's about 800 plus hours of architecture training in this organization. We teach you how to get the client requirements, how to respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, how to create an architecture that solves business problems, how to create and lead an architecture team, how to sell the architecture to the client, how to present it to the C-suite, how to design mission critical architectures, the kind of architectures that most people never would have done in their life. Why do I teach this? Well, I was fortunate enough to become a principal architect within 2 years, and I've worked on the world's largest architectures. So I bring my students those big, massive, scary architectures, the kind that most architects would never work on, so I can really get my students deep. Because when you try to bring out the scale, that's when everything breaks. So I teach my students how to design what a global bank would do, or what a mission critical healthcare system where when the systems go down, somebody dies, or retailers that lose $1 million a minute with their online sales if their systems are down. And I teach them that. And so we do 3 live days of training in that program, 1 or 2 days of what's the word I'm looking for, office hours, where people can come in and ask our clients instructions. We've got architecture projects to do, interview projects, resume training, and everything in there. So it is a comprehensive become an architect program. And I can tell you right now that graduates of that program are now working at Apple and Amazon and Cisco and Google and IBM and Microsoft and KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers and Capgemini, other prestigious organizations like TELUS, CDW, Archetype, what do you call it? JP Morgan Chase, Barclays Bank, you name it, Palo Alto Networks, Zscaler, everywhere. I hope I answered your question. Please, back to basics, answer more. I'm happy to help. But business development will be a good background to help you. Now, Doctor, where do I see the role of cloud architects heading in the next 5 to 10 years? It's actually interesting you say that. So here's what's happened to the architecture careers since I've had them. And I was one of the first architects in the architect roles, and they used to call us design engineers. And that's where people get confused between a modern architect and an architect of 20 years ago. When I started, organizations didn't know how to use technology. They just knew that somehow buying technology and adopting it was going to be good for their business. So we had these really hardcore engineers, and we had to, and here's why. We may have only had a couple megabytes of DRAM that we could work with, a couple 100 megahertz of CPU performance. For example, the routers I worked with had a 25 megahertz CPU. Now my PC has 64 3.7 gigahertz cores in it. So, think about that. So, massive. So the technology never worked. Nothing worked because it was so buggy. So in those days, we had deep techies, and the architects, the first ones were really technical architects. They were called design engineers. And that was an architect that came from a big tech background and was an expert on the tech. Fast forward a few years. Then we had the technical architect, which was more of the design engineer, but they gave more sales presentations and did some stuff. Then a couple years later we had the solutions type architect. And they still exist everywhere. And the solutions architect works for a company and designs, presents, and sells their products. So what do I mean by that? If you work at Nutanix as a solutions architect, you're going to design, present, and sell Nutanix solutions. If you work for NVIDIA, you're going to design, present, and sell NVIDIA solutions. You work for Cisco, you design, present, and sell Cisco solutions. You work for AWS, you design, present, and sell AWS solutions. So these roles are about 60 to 70% businessy and 30 to 40% tech. And companies like Microsoft or IBM that are focused on digital transformation tend to hire people with a bit more businessy background. There's some companies out there that are more focused on the tech. Their earnings are typically much less than a Microsoft, for example, but they're in tech and they have some more technical people. So that might be a 50-50 tech business person. Now, the role of the cloud architect is really the person that does these multi-cloud and hybrid multi-cloud architectures, and that's 98% of organizations now. It's becoming further and further and further away. So here's the thing. The solutions architect of the providers really are paid to sell you something. And they live, eat, and breathe, and drink the Kool-Aid. So they design, present, and sell a vendor thing, a vendor proprietary thing in many cases. And it doesn't make them bad architects. They're great architects. They're architecting with the tools they have. But you're going to get better or more enterprise-grade security solutions from a Palo Alto or a Cisco than you're going to get from a cloud provider per se. You're going to get better Linux solutions by maybe going straight to Red Hat than using somebody else's freeware, because you're going to get better support, etc. So now that organizations are big and they've got so many multi-vendors and they grew, architects are becoming more businessy. So you can see the cloud architect becoming more businessy, more businessy, more businessy. And you can see what's going on with architect pay. I remember it was about 15 years ago when the average enterprise architect where I worked was earning $250,000 a year. And now it's about $400,000 or $500,000. And it's not just inflation. It's inflation plus businesses realize they made a lot of mistakes. Cloud Doctor, what if I told you that according to McKinsey estimates, 70% of all technology projects are disastrous? What if I told you that in a recent CIO magazine, more than 50% of cloud architectures, they called abject failures? Why? Because the tech work didn't necessarily work any better than what they had in the data center, but the costs went up, and they went up a lot, and there was no business value received. So now the cloud architects are fixing all those other mistakes, and you're seeing companies want more business acumen, more leadership, more sales, more executive presence. And Cloud Doctor, as the technology gets better, I mean, architects don't build anything anyway, but start looking at what can happen. I don't need an engineer to write a Python script anymore. I can do it in Claude 3.5. I can even do it in ChatGPT. I don't need an engineer to write a bash shell script anymore. I can do it in Claude 3.5 or ChatGPT. A Python script, I can do it with AI. A Terraform script, now I can have somebody just tune them. So things that used to take many hours are there. So as all these new technologies coming in and flying at us, it's the architects that are being hired to say, how do we leverage generative AI so we don't waste $1 billion on tech that's going to do nothing for us? How do we architect the AI? For example, I saw an application which is the perfect example of what not to do. It's an AI speech coach. And here's what it does. It checks the number of words you speak per minute and a few other things. It doesn't coach charm. It doesn't coach charisma. And it really just measures a few things. You can tell it was designed by people that didn't understand how to speak or how to present. It was designed by people that thought they needed a coach. Now, if they had an architecture team who went to executive coaches and speech coaches, and they said, what do you need to measure? And they found a way to look at audience sentiment, and you can do this with AI to read people's facial expressions. You can gauge people's emotional responses to a speech, and you measured other metrics, then this tool could be helpful. So keep that in the back of your mind. That's an example of an architecture mistake. Another example of an architecture mistake was what the US government did with healthcare. Back when I was younger, we had paper records. We had this sloppy handwriting. It looked horrible. And nurses used to literally place bets at the hospital. What prescription do you think Mike actually wrote for? And it wasn't just me, it was everybody. But so there was that. And the U.S. government thought, wow, what happens if we digitize these records? All those handwriting guesses, those mistakes are going to go away. So they forced, meaning here's free money to adopt electronic health records. If you don't adopt these electronic health records, we're going to take money away from you and your reimbursement. So all the clinical facilities went and adopted electronic health records. Do you think it helped? Well, I'll give you the results. Prior to electronic health records, the number of fatal medical errors in the U.S., meaning people died, was 98,000, and it was the 5th leading cause of death. Pretty terrifying, huh? New electronic health records come in. Billions and billions and billions of dollars are spent on these electronic health records. Medical errors go up 250% to 250,000 people a year die because of mistakes. And that is now the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States, medical errors. So did the tech help? Not really. So our companies are more keen to hire architects that can really make sure these projects work and these programs work. So more business. And that's what I've seen over in my career. It became Mike, you're a great architect. Would you like to go to an executive coach? And my company sent me there. Mike, you're a great cloud architect, but you got this CCIE and CISSP on your business card. I don't really want people seeing that or thinking of that, Mike. Can you take the CCIE and CISSP off your business card, Mike? And can you just put your MS and your MBA so you look like an executive, so people take you seriously as an executive? And one of the VPs at Cisco asked me to do that, so I did it. So you can see this is how things are actually going. More business, more business, more business. So I think you're going to see more the CIOs taking more and more money in the future. I think you're going to see the executives getting paid more and more and more, and less and less and less tech, because now AI can help us with so many of these other tools, like even system design. AI can help with system profile. It can make recommendations. But here's what AI can't do: the main architect's job. Learn the business processes, manage stakeholders, lead a team, sell a vision, create a governance structure. That stuff is the key. And that's why my architects get hired regardless of their background, and they're always getting hired aggressively. Hope that helps you there, Cloud Doctor. King of Glory Palm Oil. Interesting. Hi, Mike. How long could it take me to be hired as a generative AI architect from your course? Well, King of Glory Palm Oil, we're projecting 6 to 12 months, and I'll tell you why we're projecting it. We just launched the program, David Lithicum and I. And I can tell you from our Cloud Architect program, it typically takes 6 to 12 months. Some people get hired faster. It happens, and some people take a little longer based upon how long. When people take courses from Go Cloud Careers, they stay on our program until the day they're hired. That's graduation for us. So I hope that would work. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So it's that. So 6 to 12 months on our cloud architect. We're seeing 6 to 12 months with a lot of my people that have gotten enterprise architect jobs. But it might take a little longer. It might take a little shorter. I see Mr. Businessman popped in. He's a good friend. He was a student of mine. I think he got a little frustrated for a couple of months, took a couple of months off, and now is an awesome security architect with a great job. And we loved him the whole time. But that's an example of someone that could take a little longer. But the point is, he got there, and we were all happy to say, stay with us. Stay with us. Keep at it. You will get there. And he did, and I'm super happy for him. So there's that. But I'd say 6 to 12 months is most likely. You might get through sooner. You might get through a little longer. But you can stay in those live classes for at least a year, and unlimited access to the rest of the program. And, there's no better person to teach our AI architect program. It's David Lithicum. And, I've been an architect, and I created components of this program for 25 years. And admittedly, my AI experience is not David's. I started working with AI in the year 2000. David Lithicum, who teaches this class, started designing AI systems back in the late 80s. In fact, his AI systems were so good it landed him a job in NASA to design AI systems for NASA in the 90s. And, Deloitte's head of cloud strategy. Every architecture he worked on was a big AI architecture, and that's kind of like the chief cloud architect for the entire company. So he's got 35 years of AI experience. So just the two of us there have about 60 years experience. Plus, of course, we've got 3 MBAs, which teach in the program business acumen. We have 2 PhD business school professors who teach in this program. We sometimes have CTOs, enterprise architects pop in, and other architects. So I think you're going to do really, really great if you want it and you do the work. Does the Gen AI architecture teach live end-to-end architectures like I do in class? He does things very similar. You know, it's interesting. The first time David reached out to me and he said, hey, you want to do a live stream? And we never met. And, you know, you look at his schedule and you look at my schedule. We just, poof, we did a live stream, no prep, no real discussion beforehand. And as we're doing it, we're like, wow, he says the same things that I do. I say the same things that he does. He does it exactly the same way I do it. I do it this way. So lots of mad respect for David Lithicum. He's awesome. And he teaches a very good end-to-end architecture discussion like I do. And he's really great. Sounds good, Tyrone. Let's bring in the next one. And while we're at it, I see Mr. Businessman said it would break his heart to take his CISSP off of his resume. The good news, Mr. Businessman, is you are a security architect, and that's going to look really great as long as you stay a security architect. But I know it's in you, and one day you find yourself as more of a CTO or a CIO or one of these executive architect roles like I had, they'll be asking you to take it off too. But you can still keep it and put it on anytime you want. Cloud Doctor, what advice would you offer someone aspiring to be a cloud architect? Well, if they could and they wanted to, I'd say to take my program. And I would say that because I know it works, because I've got graduates working at every major cloud provider, every major consulting firm, major technology companies. So I would say that. But if they didn't want to train with us, I would say get your business acumen training somewhere, potentially a business school. I would say get your presentation skills coaching from someone that knows how to give presentations coaching. And there's lots of organizations that are not only good at presentation coaching, but they actually have actors and actresses that are there to help teach you stage presence. I know I went through it, and I use a lot of those skills when I coach people that are there. I would tell people that, so the person that they're going to need to take some leadership training if they don't train with us. If they train with us, they're going to get their leadership training, but you're going to need that training to be able to lead deals. I would say get some negotiation training if you're not with us, because you're going to be negotiating with stakeholders, that kind of thing. Then I would say learn the network and the data center. Learn how networking works. Learn how to design networks. Learn your BGP, your OSPF, your IP addressing, subnetting, supernetting, route aggregation, your spanning tree, your link aggregation groups, those kinds of things. Now, when we teach these things, it's nothing for us, and our students get it like that because we have multiple Cisco certified internet expert network architects that are teaching that. And when you're an expert on it, you can explain it simply. And when you don't know it, it sounds like gibberish, which is why most people have a hard time with networking. But I would say learn compute and get in there and learn your hypervisors and how does that type 1 hypervisor work and how does it manage memory and CPU and resources. And when can you say a PCI pass-through to push a GPU or a network card into a virtual machine? And you're going to need that for AI and other things. So you got to learn that. Learn how the containers and container orchestration works. Learn your storage area networks, not how to build them, how to design them, for an example. So can you keep that in the back of your mind? So learn how to architect demilitarized zones, data loss prevention strategies, end-to-end encryption strategies, when to use zero trust versus defense in depth, and why neither one's going to be good enough and you're going to need both. But learn those kinds of things. Learn how to design your data architectures and be able to go out there, go on an interview, be given a problem and deliver a presentation and win meaning get hired. That's what I would say. And Cloud Doctor, there's a ebook that our team wrote that is in the description of this video that will tell you everything you need to learn, the skills and what we do, and I encourage you to do it. And while you're at it, come attend our How to Become an Enterprise Web Architect webinar that we're going to do on this Thursday. It's going to be free. We'll cut you because you can ask us any questions on literally live. We could even look at your LinkedIn profile if you wanted. Anything we can do to help you because it's live and it's going to be on Zoom. So there's that. And, right now, Chris and I think it was 149 emails that we had asking us to extend our sale one more day. So we extended it just for the people on YouTube for today. So with that, our architecture tuition is about 1 day of the average architect's pay. The average cloud architect earns about $1,000 a day. Our tuition at half off is probably, actually Chris can do the math, but I think it's $1,250 for the cloud architect program, which is less than 2 days pay. So I know we'll get you hired as an architect if you do our work probably a year or two faster than you ever could on your own. And given that the average architect earns $20,000 a month, anything that gets you hired sooner, I would do. But whatever you want to do, that's what I would do. You live in Germany and want to be a cloud architect. From a logistics specialist that you're in now. Germany loves degrees so much. What's your suggestion? So Ernjoy, very familiar with Germany, designed lots of architectures in Germany. I actually got to say, I thought the airport and the highways are some of the best I've seen anywhere in the world. So yes, they love degrees, but more importantly, Germany wants people that can do the job and do it well. And people with a level of attention to detail and people that do things with excellence, which is why some German products are usually incredible. So there's that. The key is that you need to learn how to become an architect more than you ultimately need to get the degree. So here's what I would do. I would get some good architecture training and learn how to become an architect. And if you wanted a degree, I would go out there and get a degree in business, not tech. Architecture training plus that. Now, I'm going to be clear. We're now in a world where degrees have become less important. Microsoft stopped making degrees really required for jobs there. Google stopped caring about degrees. I think Amazon stopped caring about degrees. So your biggest tech employers don't care. And the problem is the relevancy of the degrees. You can get a degree in something and still know nothing about it in today's world. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So I'd get a business degree and then I would take a good architectural training program and learn architecture. And that way you've got both. I mean, Daniel Bosa was hired by JP Morgan Chase without even graduating high school. Wallace Agana was hired in the UK. Again, no experience. So, what was his name? Ivan Tambo. Well, you should see this guy. He's over at AWS. He got hired as an architect 1. He's been promoted to an architect 2. We trained him. He interviewed with AWS, and I remember the interview was in like November, December. And when he interviewed with them, they made him an offer. And I remember he reached out and he said, Mike, I really want to finish my degree. Do you think they'll let me? And I'm like, ask him. So he asked Amazon to wait until May the next year when he finished his degree, and they held this position for him. And they're very lucky to have him. He's an awesome architect. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But that's what I would do. I had to get a degree in something good, like business. I would learn business, and that way I would learn the architecture piece from somebody else. And then you're going to find yourself in a position where you can actually design the architectures because you've been trained to be an architect. And your architectures are going to work. Most architectures fail to provide any business benefit, but if you've got a business degree and you learn business and then you learn architecture, wow, you're going to be very successful. So that's what I would do. And go out there and find it. There's plenty of multinationals right now, if you were trained, that would hire you in the meantime, that would even pay for your degree. But I like degrees. Look, I've got degrees. I've got an MBA. I've got a master's in science where I became a nurse practitioner. And I actually did another MBA, 3/4 of it, and then ran out to it just because I love school. I just always enjoyed it. But you're going to be great. Go out there and become great, because no matter where you're at in the world, what really is needed is competency. And I'm not joking, Earnjoy. You can interview 1,000 people and not find anybody that could even do the architect job, and companies know that. So they hire people that are great. You'll be fine either way. Join us for the free AWS Solutions Architect Bootcamp next week. That will not teach people how to become an architect, but we will go far deeper into architecture on that than the AWS Solutions Architect Professional would, because those certifications are just the name of a service and how to configure it, but they don't really teach you anything. You can completely finish an AWS Solutions Architect Professional and truly not understand anything about a NoSQL database or a relational database or, an in-memory database or Kubernetes or all those components. And when we teach our free Solutions Architect Bootcamp, we're going to go into those things too. We'll dive deeper into security. We'll dive deeper into AI. We'll dive deeper into networking than they would even cover in any of these certifications. We're going to do that, and we're going to do it for free to help you. But I'd say do that. That'll give you something, and attend one of our webinars. Learn what architects do. And look, I'd love to train you, and I've got lots of people hired in Germany. Sig Wolf was 63 when we got him hired. What's his name? Malad is in Germany, and he got his first solutions architect job. I'm thinking of another gentleman, Ernest, in Germany. I think did really well. Gotten lots of people great jobs in Germany. Okay, well, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. I have to get back to work. Unfortunately, it's been a pretty chaotic week, but I wanted to go out there and answer some questions completely free. Reminder to everybody, we've got a completely free Solutions Architect Associate Bootcamp coming next week for 2 weeks straight. Join us. You can sign up now. The link is in the description in the chat box. In addition to that, we have a free webinar on Thursday on how to become an enterprise architect. And if you want to learn how to become a cloud architect, we'll talk about that in that webinar as well. And lastly, we received so many requests that we extended our sale of 50% off just for you guys on YouTube, just for 24 hours. So if you're interested in any of our training programs, take advantage of it now. Half off is a major discount, and we don't do that often. So take care, everyone. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified of new videos or to help you in your cloud architect